Back at it today with another season preview, as today we're going to be looking at the Chicago White Sox. Not much of an intro needed here, let's get right into the video. Last year, the White Sox were arguably baseball's biggest disappointment. Coming off a 93-win season in 2021 in which they won their division, they were expected to take another leap forward last season. But as we all know by now, that wasn't the case, as they finished out the season at 81-81. And similar to their .500 record, they were all around a very average team. Now as for the offseason so far, they have lost some important pieces, but they've also made a few pickups. Up to this point, they've signed two notable names in Mike Clevinger and Andrew Benintendi. But as I just mentioned, they lost some pretty big names in Jose Abreu, Johnny Cueto, AJ Pollock, and potentially Elvis Andrus, who is a free agent. Now getting onto their projected lineup this season, we have to start with Luis Robert, who last year hit .284 with 12 home runs and 11 stolen bases. Robert was injured for a good chunk of the season last year, but if he's healthy and on the field, he's one of the best outfielders in baseball, not only offensively, but defensively as well. Over at shortstop, they also have Tim Anderson, who last year hit .301 with 6 home runs and 13 stolen bases in limited time. Anderson at this point has become very underrated. He still is one of the best shortstops in the game. He just has to stay on the field this year, and I think he's going to prove a lot of people that he still is one of the best. As just mentioned, they picked up Andrew Benintendi from the Yankees, who last year hit .304 with 5 home runs, 8 stolen bases, and a .771 OPS. Those numbers don't seem like they're very good numbers, but I think Benintendi is a much better player. I mean, he was a much better outfielder back in his Red Sox days. I know that is a long time ago, but I think he still has a lot left in the tank and is going to be much better this season. They also have Yasmani Grandal, who prior to last season was one of the best catchers in baseball. I say prior to last season because last year he was really bad. He hit .202 with only 5 home runs, so going forward I think he's going to bounce back and be much better, especially with how good he's been throughout his career. Another key piece to this offense is Andrew Vaughn, who last year hit .271 with 17 home runs and 76 runs driven in. And one name that I think is going to have a huge year this season is Eloy Jimenez. Last year he hit .295 with 16 home runs and an .858 OPS. He was obviously injured for a good chunk of the season, but if he's fully healthy this season, he could be one of the few players in baseball who I could see hitting 50 home runs. Gavin Sheets is also a name that isn't really thrown out there that much, but he was good for Chicago last year. He hit .241 with 15 home runs. They also have Yoan Moncada, who last year only hit .212 with 12 home runs, but at this point I don't think they have much better options than him. A few other players in this lineup who could see some at-bats here and there are Romy Gonzalez, Jake Burger, and Leury Garcia. They also have a couple top 100 prospects who could potentially make an impact this year in Colson Montgomery, the shortstop, who is the number 57 prospect in baseball, and Oscar Callis, who is the number 95 prospect, who is an outfielder with lots of power. So all in all, I think this offense has some potential. Last year they were pretty average, but that was with tons of injuries, and this year, if they can stay healthy, I think they could be close to a top 10 offense. Now getting onto their pitching, similar to their offense, it was pretty average last year as they had a 3.92 team ERA, which ranked 16th. Now looking at the starting rotation, they have a clear-cut ace in Dylan Cease, who last year in 184 innings posted a 2.2 ERA with 227 strikeouts. They also have Lucas Giolito, who did have a down year last season. In 162 innings, he posted a 4.9 ERA. But throughout his career, he has been a much better pitcher, so there is reason to believe there is a bounce back coming with Giolito. Another name in this rotation who's going to give them some good innings is Lance Lynn. Last year in 122 innings, he had a 3.99 ERA. They also have Michael Kopech, who was all in all one of their best pitchers last season, as in 119 innings he posted a 3.54 ERA. As for the fifth and final spot in this starting rotation, it is up in the air at this point. It would normally be Mike Clevinger, who they picked up in the offseason, but there have been some rumors around him in terms of a domestic violence case, so he might not even see the field for the majority of the season. In the event that Clevinger does get suspended and misses time, I think Ronaldo Lopez is the perfect candidate for that spot. He was formerly a starting pitcher and prospect in this system, and last year in the bullpen he had a 2.76 ERA. Now getting onto their bullpen, it was again pretty average as they had a 4 ERA which ranked 19th. Now when going over these teams, I would normally start out with the bullpen with the team's closer, and for the White Sox it would happen to be Liam Hendriks. But with the very unfortunate news that has recently broke that Hendriks has been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, the first thing we should focus on at this point is Hendriks' health and well-being going forward, because I really wish him the best and just hope to see him back and healthy on the field soon. So with the closer role being currently vacant, I think one candidate who could step up and see the 9th inning role is Kendall Graveman. Last year he had 6 saves and a 3.18 ERA. And outside of Kendall Graveman, they also have a couple other solid relievers in Tanner Banks, Aaron Bummer, and Jimmy Lambert, who all had sub 3.5 ERAs last year. And one other name I want to mention in this bullpen is Garrett Crochet. He did miss all of last season and will miss a good chunk of this season as well due to Tommy John surgery, but if he's healthy and back at what he was pre-Tommy John surgery, he could have a huge impact on this bullpen. So now that we went through the roster top to bottom, let's take a look at their season outlook record-wise. As a whole, it's pretty safe to say a huge reason why the White Sox were so disappointing last year was because of 1, their manager in Tony La Russa, and number 2, because of injuries. And it's pretty realistic to believe that both of these two big issues may have been solved. They hired a new manager this offseason in Pedro Grifol, who did play in the big leagues at one point for the Mets. As for their injuries, yes, they're unpredictable, but you have to think it can't get much worse than last year. I also think players like Lucas Giolito, Lance Lynn, and Yasmani Grandal are all going to have bounce-back years and be much better than they were last season. So realistically, I'm going to project them right around 90 wins. I think they're going to have a big bounce-back season and compete for a postseason spot. So yes, I do believe in the White Sox this season. I think they are going to be a much more healthy team, and they're also going to have a much better manager. Let me know what you guys think of the White Sox down below. Thank you guys again so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.